All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talk Advocacy to Me, where we discuss one single question around the field of customer marketing and advocacy. Welcome back. We're so excited to have a very interesting guest with us today who is not necessarily focused in our field of customer marketing and advocacy, but who is actually a true brand expert. So please welcome Ryan Farmer with me today. He has over 20 years experience in brand, and I'm so excited to have him on here. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Mad Genius in Ridgeland, Mississippi, and he has overseen all aspects of branding as an agency professional. So he's really passionate about helping businesses grow their brands. And I've looked at a lot of Ryan's work over the years, and it's so fun. Some of the creative stuff that you guys have done really excites me. And sometimes I wish I was just in branding myself because I really get a kick out of it. But unfortunately, I'm not, or fortunately, but I'm super passionate about this topic. So if you know me, you know I'm passionate about branding and its intersection with customer advocacy, specifically customer advocacy programming. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Ryan, thank you so much for being on here.
This is exciting. This is the first podcast I've ever been on, so I'm a little bit nervous and excited about talking with you guys about branding.
Awesome. I don't know if there's any like synergy with it being Talk Like a Pirate Day and you being on your first podcast. I wish we had thought that through, but if
Missed
if
opportunity.
anything comes to you at the moment, just throw it out there. And of course, we have the lovely Deena Zenyk, as always, my co-host here with us. Hi, Deena.
Hey, I just wanted to note that I'm double repping on the swag today
Oh,
because
nice.
we're talking brand. So my Advo stack is bigger than yours. And of course, the Talk Advocacy to mug. So I'm fully branded to the max. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, speaking of
Um,
branding, I had to fully explain to my wife that this was an okay podcast for me to be participating in when we have, the lips going on and her seeing things that she wasn't alerted on. So we're all cool. I don't think she's
oh,
listening, but she's been
but
alerted.
see, it got you guys talking. So we
Right,
must have done
right.
something right. We must have done something right. Thank you so much for being on here. Really appreciate it. And
Yep.
you may, some of our listeners may recognize Ryan Farmer. He was one of our judges for the CAP Awards 2023. Specifically, we brought him in for our new category, which was advocacy brand. Because Deena and I spend a lot of time with our clients talking about the importance of branding and how that plays into advocacy programs, and maybe some of the lack of maturity in what we're seeing there. So let's just start out with the basic question. I mean, why does a real brand foundation even matter, specifically when it comes to advocacy programs? We all agree it matters for the parent brand. Yes, we've got to sell that software. Yes, we've got to sell those services. We understand the foundational value of a brand. Why does it matter even when it comes down to programming in your mind, Ryan?
Mhm. Because regardless of the setting, people are still making value judgments in really unfair amounts of time. So, every little interaction matters. And just like the metaphor that we use constantly when you're walking down the grocery aisle, even products that you've never heard of or seen before, you're going, oh, that's top shelf, that's middle shelf, that's the great value Walmart brand, so to speak. So people are still making those judgments on the advocacy programs. It doesn't matter. They're taking those associations of things that they've seen in the space and automatically labeling you. And branding often gets mislabeled. It gets misunderstood a lot. And we're constantly talking with clients that say, oh, we need a rebrand. And it's like, great. Okay. We adhere to a philosophy that's a little bit controversial in the sense that we believe that you don't actually own your brand. Your brand actually exists in the minds of your users, your constituents, your people out there. The great philosopher Jeff Bezos even said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And, breaking down the wall of a brand is not a logo, or it's not a color palette, or it's not a website. It is the theory of branding is trying to influence all of the things in the stratosphere to get people to have a feeling about your product. So it's much less about items. Yes, items are important. Items are the way that we try to influence, but ultimately, how are we trying to make somebody feel about the product, the program, the organization? If the focus is there, those you're trying to influence those snap judgments that people are going to have when they're walking down the grocery aisle and making those judgments in 5 seconds. So
I'm
that's a lot.
smiling, Ryan, because you're like speaking our language. Like we
Sure.
literally go into strategy sessions for launching an advocacy program, and we literally stop and ask, how do we want people to feel when
Mm,
they are a part of this program? And we find that a lot of people skip, they associate brand with a name, right? And we have a very crowded space now of a very similarly named programs,
mm,
but they skip the work of thinking of brand as the values, the operational values, the way we want people to think this program runs, how they want to feel when they're a part of it, et cetera. So just some really foundational elements that we strongly believe. So I'm smiling because I mean, we are, I'm so with you. Just a quick sidetrack. I worked one summer the one summer I ever lived in Wisconsin, I worked in a cheese factory. Okay.
wow.
So, so
Stereotype.
cliche, so cliche. I did. And I actually got to see that the cheese being packaged in one brand was the same cheese that was being packaged in another brand.
Mhm.
I still have hard time buying brands I don't
Mhm.
recognize or considered low end brands. I know that in a lot of cases it's the exact same product. And it is so interesting how my psychology won't let me let that go.
Mhm.
And so, like you said, people, as we see more and more advocacy programs in the field, there's going to be more and more snap judgments about that sounds like a program for me and where my time should go. And that doesn't sound like something I would be interested in. Deena, I see you like nodding vigorously.
Oh, I'm thinking about things with the same product being packaged and then the like low end brand. I mean, we all know it. We all know it. But the one that I do ascribe higher value to is the Kirkland stuff from Costco. So that's actually where my mind is right now. That psychology piece of like, why do we do that? And then when we think
Mm,
about advocacy, the other thoughts going through my head, back to your point, Liz, about Ryan, when we do go into our clients and workshop around brand and we say, how do we want this audience to
mm,
feel? I think, Liz, between you and I, we could rattle off the 10 words that pretty much every client tells us this is how we want our client to feel. So if we all want our customers to have this sort of feeling with the brand, then how do we create kind of distinct
mhm,
brands when we're all looking to generate those same feelings with
mhm.
the audience? We want
Yep.
them to feel inspired and valued and seen and heard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was going to be my next question for Ryan, which is, hey, if we don't fully control it, it is how they feel about us. And if we all a lot of businesses want their clients to feel sort of the same things, what's the next step here?
Mm, mm. So you mentioned this earlier. Everybody's time is incredibly valuable. I think the average American sees between 6 and 10,000 advertisements or calls for their attention a day. So you might be one of those tiny
Whoa.
little blips. And how do you distinguish yourself as worth 2 seconds of paying attention in those moments? So we talked about grocery stores and we talked about top, middle, bottom shelf. There is a little bit of a challenge there also that everybody naturally says, "Oh, I want to be top shelf." Okay, well, what does that actually mean? Well, you've got to present yourself as having tremendous value and even luxurious value. It's
Hmm.
it, it's a different strategy than bottom shelf. If you're great value is not a bad strategy. It is a different strategy. Now you're selling volume and now you're selling the feeling of you are saving money. So there are a lot of people that will buy things because they feel like they're getting a lot of bang for their buck, as opposed to there are people that want to buy something expensive that makes them feel good about their purchase. So finding out where you are in that stratosphere and then committing to it. And then once that's established and we know we're not straying from that path, trying to find ways to be unexpected in those lanes to where someone stops and goes, oh, wait, I've expected this because I always see that. That's a little bit different. I'm going to pay attention to that for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the real magic is. And that's where, as a creative shop, we're trying our best for every one of our clients to try to find that lane and try to deliver something that's unexpected.
Man, and it must be getting so hard. Like I can't
Yep.
even imagine from just the brand perspective, because we know we've seen such an influx even of branded B2B programs that's standing out. Like now you have to do this work that you guys have been doing for forever. And I love your point about, everyone's trying to be this. And I think Deena will generally agree with me. Most vendors come in hoping that they will offer sort of the same value. We'll offer you networking, or we'll offer you spotlight opportunities, or we'll offer you access to our C-suite team, or we'll offer you great content. So there's a lot of overlap in these programs, and it's a crowded space. So when you can literally offer something that just stands out immediately as like, oh, I don't get that anywhere else. I think we did a 5 and 5 video that we published the other day of landing pages, and we literally called out, oh, here's another landing page that has generally all the same value propositions as most of our advocacy programs, but you do get this custom bobblehead doll, and it's like right there on the front page, and it's like so practical and tactical in a field that's very ephemeral to some degree. Like I'm getting a lot of value, but it's very much like maybe it's coming at some point. I might get more or less of it than you. Like I'm not really sure. And then we talk a lot about the clarity of B2C value and loyalty programs. They're like the opposite end of the spectrum. I know that I buy 5 coffees and I get 1 free. I know that I take, I get 10,000 airline points and I get a free airline trip. It's so tactical and it's so clear. And then we came onto the scene and we're like, we're about relationship. We're about connection. We're about extra value. And so now I really feel like, hey, it's time for some crossover on both sides in order to stand out as a program. What do you think about that?
Well, especially in the tech space, and I feel like there's a lot of what you're talking about in that arena, copycat syndrome, like you said, is incredibly proficient. I mean, it started off with kind of silly names, Google and Dunzo and Spotify, Shopify, Hulu, Hooli, all those kind of quirky names just for the sake of being quirky. And we've kind of noticed a shift in the last, couple of years where a lot of these names are getting a little more intentional with their emotions. So I went to TechCrunch the other day and looked at just articles on the front page. What products and what brands are out there being featured? And now it's Clubhouse, Moments, Discord, Retool, Mindtrip. So we've gone a little bit away from silliness and we're now into intentional. This is the emotion. This is the scenario, so to speak, that we want you to think about, which is great. But now if you are trying to build a product, you've got to not be one of those. You've got to look like you belong, but you also have to stand out in that arena. So it's incredibly challenging. Research is the absolute best way in which you can try to stand out in that arena, and that's understanding where your audience lives. Yes, they live on your platform, and you've already won them, and that's a really, really good thing. But go see where else they live. Go see where else they participate online. Go find out where they eat and sleep and stay and travel, and find out every single thing you can about them, because there might be an angle that you could play that someone else is not playing based off of an audience's behavioral traits.
Yeah, absolutely. And you as the judge of the Advocacy Branding Award for Cap Awards 2023, the winner was HubSpot, right? What did what stood out about that branding, maybe?
So I really appreciated how simple and direct it was. I'm familiar with HubSpot. I saw it's called Hub Fans. So I could read Hub Fans and understand exactly what it is and it's not being oversold to me all in 1 second. Um, you know, it's not hub evangelists or some of these other phrases that get thrown around where you're asking to be pledging your undying loyalty to. No, it's a fan, somebody that is a fan of a product and would speak positively about your product. I got that all in one, and it didn't take me away from the brand. The word hub they own. It'd be really hard to knock someone off the mountain of the term hub, so they own that. Swap out spot for fans, and it's very, very simple, very direct, and I just appreciated that. Appreciated being an outsider, being able to understand it quickly without the 10 minutes of exposition to understand the space that I'm in.
It would have been really, oh, sorry, Liz.
No.
I was just going to say it would have been really easy for them to have gone hub heroes, which is like, that's what heroes is one that kind of, it bugs me a bit. It's really asking a lot of the person who hasn't even joined your program yet. It's asking a lot of them to be your hero. And the hub fans is just ratcheting it down just enough that it can be more all-encompassing, lower barrier. It feels friendly. I don't feel like there's a ton being asked of me. You're just meeting me where I'm at. I'm a fan.
Yes. And to be fair to all because we all had programs named some pretty aspirational things at some point.
Yes.
And to be fair, it's like, it's like Ryan said, you've got to read and research what's going on right now. And the problem is things shift so incredibly fast, right? So when Deena and I first came onto the customer advocacy scene, these programs didn't exist, and you didn't have relational connections necessarily with your clients. So you were doing something brand new, and they didn't have 20 vendors necessarily, software vendors that they were working with. You might have been like the tool that they were working with for the day. So that deeper connection stood out. A lot of these people had never been part of a program. They weren't wined and dined like other departments might have been. So it was a really interesting time to get to show something different to an audience who was not used to that type of interaction. Fast forward now, here we are 10 years down the road, and most organizations have some type of customer programming. And I think to Ryan's point is I may not want to be a hero. I may not want to be a champion, because that's another strong word. But there is a layer who might want to be a champion, and they really do have that incredibly insane, strong connection with your platform because it might be the number one platform that they are interacting with, and their job depends on it. And so I think that, Deena, plays into what we're seeing, which is programming itself has had to become very diverse. Champions may not be, and probably isn't, something that 90% of your client base resonates with. They might be the fan. They might be the hub fan. There is still those people who exist who want to be a champion, who want to be the star, who want to be the VIP, and they are all about that. And I think it is knowing your audience. And I love what Ryan said, and I never really thought about it this way, Ryan, of as we build program portfolios as organizations, we need to think top shelf, middle shelf, and bottom shelf. We need to have accessibility for all different types of people and how they shop. And it's not even just competing against other vendors. We're trying to compete as ourselves of reaching and gaining the interest of a diverse audience. We can't just pigeonhole every customer into, we want them all to be our VIPs. That's not possible.
Honestly, if someone is living up to the name champion or evangelist, you should probably go hire that person instead of, assuming that they are this, zealot for your product.
But there are some, right? Because we've seen brands where they get the tattoo, their customer gets the tattoo on them. We've seen, Salesforce Trailblazer, they does an amazing job of building these fans for life. So you can do it, but trying to differentiate yourself, again, if we go back to that in a crowded space, I think is having a good grasp of when it's okay to be bottom shelf. When it's okay to have a program that's a bit more these are the 3 things I deliver. And that's great because I don't get that anywhere else. And it may be very tactical and practical. It may not be as emotionally driven, but it is still very valuable for the level that those people would like to engage.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say that you agree with me because you
Yeah,
nodded.
I missed a question there if I was supposed to answer it,
No,
but
no, you didn't. I'm like, just affirm me, Ryan. Affirm what I'm saying is right.
yeah.
So, okay, so we've talked about some interesting challenges as when it comes to advocacy branding. So what should you be thinking about, in your opinion, if you are trying to stand out in a crowded space?
Mm,
If multiple layers of these programs do exist now, and maybe you do offer sort of the same values that another vendor is able to offer.
mm,
We're kind of restricted as B2B organizations on what kind of value we can offer. We're not allowed to give away free product the more you do for us. So how would you think, or what are some ideas that come to your mind of, if I'm trying to build a brand that really stands out in this space, what do I need to do practically?
Well, you have to understand that every little interaction matters. Your email signature, all the way up to fully
Mm,
produced commercials. You need to be consistent and incredibly disciplined to strike that same tone in every single interaction. Because human nature is, you can interact with somebody 100 times and 99 of them are good and one of them is bad, and you're going to remember the bad one. You're going to remember the questionable moment. You probably won't remember the 99 in detail at the same level as the bad one, or the misaligned one, or whatever negative phrase you want to describe that as. So constantly looking for opportunities and understanding all of those moments, and making sure they're important to your organization. And then you've got to know your audience, like we talked about earlier, just researching as much as you possibly can, and know that you've already won this audience over. So it's a little bit of a different strategy that I'm particularly used to, because in most cases, I'm trying to introduce somebody to a brand or introduce somebody to a product. We've already won these people over. So I think there's a window to be able to take a few risks in this arena. So if there's some emerging technology, or if there's something that you're seeing in another industry that you wish you could try, you know, doing that with your existing customer base, your existing champions, so to speak, is less risky, because you've got the ability to try some things, to experiment. So, one of the areas that I find really intriguing, that we have no affiliation with whatsoever, but there is a platform called User Interviews, and I came into marketing and advertising kind of at the tail end of the focus group world, where you bring in some strangers, you give them lunch, and you ask them a couple questions about, do you like this color, or do you like this? How does this make you feel? The evolution of that has been really interesting to see. And there's a platform called User Interviews, and they source all kinds of people, and you as a product or as a platform can go to them and say, I want you to find me these people here, and you can schedule 10-15 hour long interviews with very, very specific audience types. So those people get rewarded. I actually participated in one of these. Someone was asking me about some lead gen software, and I showed up for 30 minutes and got a $20 gift card. And But they vetted me out because they had very intense information on me matching the lead gen software's audience for who they wanted to talk to. So as much specificity as you possibly can, talking to your audience, understanding who they are, and listening to them, will determine what's really, really important in those moments for your brand engaging, or your brand being available to be engaged with. So
And I know you guys, Ryan, I know you're a fan of kind of the unexpected, and you've mentioned that a couple times. Like, take risks, maybe do something of the unexpected. What does that mean to you when you say the unexpected?
well, we've hit on it a little bit already. When I walk into a fast food restaurant. I expect to get in a line, go look at a menu, and make my selection and talk to someone that's going to take my order. Well, if there's a kiosk now there in front of me, I have whoa, that's different. I wasn't expecting that. I'm actually going to give that a shot because this is something new. I'm not totally thrown off by the idea of this. I didn't walk in and say, why is there an ATM machine in the middle of the fast food restaurant? It was familiar, but it was different. And now it's okay. I might actually save time. Oh, rewards points are now a thing, and there's different value associations that I might have. Those are the moments that get you noticed, and that's going back to the 10,000 ads a day. I might not have been in the funnel, so to speak, to make a decision on a product in that moment, but I hopefully would remember to come back to that association, to come back to that crossing of paths when I am in that moment. And if you're not memorable, you're just white noise and feeds, and I don't know if you can even use the term commercials anymore, but just the constant screaming of pay attention to me, pay attention to me. It's really interesting to see how human psychology has evolved to just really tone out large chunks of people screaming. It's always when we do a lot of web development here, and it's whenever we test things out, whenever we put our product in front of folks from an older generation, they read every single word, they absorb every single thing, and it takes them, I'm talking people that are 60 plus, it takes them a lot longer to say, okay, I understand what this is. They feel the need to read it all. You put that in front of an 18-year-old and they're going to look at it, boom, boom. All right, yeah, I like it. And it's this incredibly challenging space because if you don't know where your audience lives, you have to have a strategy that talks to all those people. And more than likely, if everybody's special, then no one's special. So you're just kind of saying nothing.
So interesting. So first one, little standout things that you remember, et cetera. I was just actually noticing your little lab coat that you wear always, right? So
Little
this,
lab coat. Oh, it's so
yeah.
cute.
Yeah. But it's like, it's one of those moments you're like, oh, that's different. Like he's wearing like a coat, but it's the Mad Genius. And I know you've got your neon sign behind you, which I love. I've already said that. So just little moments or ways to jolt. And Deena, I think that's really aligned to what we think brands and advocacy programs are going to need to be able to do now too, is that experience needs to have little jolts of the unexpected. We might call it surprise and delight, but it needs to be systematic, like wearing this coat, right?
Sure.
So and we do get to talk to clients about that, but it can be kind of hard to do in B2B, right, Deena?
Yeah. We need some words that are standing out here for me are to take a risk. That sometimes you need to take a risk when it comes to brand. And in the world of customer advocacy, as Ryan said, like these people are already your fans. Like this should be kind of a safe space to take a bit of a risk and to get out of kind of that shell of like perfect alignment to the parent brand and really think about what is special and unique about the advocacy program and that unique audience, and how do we create the right value that's going to create or draw out the right emotions from the audience. And Liz, you and I, we're working on a brand project right now, and hopefully we can take some of this and bring it into the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. And I think one of my takeaways too is that idea of, not every program is a VIP program. And I think it's okay to own up to that. But be very clear if you're going to have a more tactical program, you have to have a very clear value that is not always tied to, oh, I hope you get the most out of I hope you get the most out of your experience. But no, like I legitimately know what's going to happen in this program, and I legitimately know what I'm going to get out of it. If I spend 2 hours in this program, I can kind of expect to get this much out of it. We shy away from that because our practice is really built on relationship. It's not built on no name, number loyalty programs. We strive to be somewhat the opposite of that, but I do feel like as these programs proliferate, we're going to need to recognize there are lots of different programs and they have very different strategies now. Instead of these one size fits all programs where we're trying, like Ryan said, it's very, very difficult to be everything to every customer. And that will just weigh down your program where it doesn't say anything necessarily strongly to anybody. It's just kind of a nice to have. We don't want to be a nice to have programs. We want to be really integral to the strategy of the organization, which means there needs to be a lot of clarity around the value to the organization and to the member themselves. We are at time. Ryan, this has been absolutely fantastic. Any word of wisdom you want to leave the
Well,
audience
I don't know how wise this is, but I can imagine there are brand managers listening to this in terror, going, "Oh, wow, we're encouraging our advocacy people to take risks and go rogue and deliver the unexpected." The brand police doesn't like those sort of things. And I would say that whatever you do not lose the spirit, do not lose the core values, the core tenets of your parent brand. It's incredibly complicated to
with.
have a brand program within a brand. If your brand program does not tightly align with the brand foundations of the parent, then it's just causing fractures and it will just cause problems downstream. But if you can find a way to align with that, but be just different enough to stop someone in their tracks to say, "Oh, okay, that's Hub Fans. Oh, I get that. That's a little different. I understand that." Then both of those worlds can exist in harmony and they can have compounding effects, positive effects.
I call that slightly left of center.
Mm,
That's what I say to clients. Like, if your parent brand is the center, slightly left, not far left. What could be slightly left of that center?
And we could even add to the complexity of that and say, you might be a really large organization with 4, 5, 6, 7 different customer programs.
Right.
Each one has to have an individual enough identity, but still be aligned across those programs to not fracture, like you said, the cohesivity of the brand, but individual enough that you understand the differentiation between these programs. It is quite challenging, but I guess my pet peeve sometimes is like the brand world is incredibly mature and they're always pushing forward because they have to cut through that noise. You always have to be on the cutting edge of how to gain attention. We can watch brands like Mad Genius. For some reason, we don't always bring that over. We're not translating it into this field. And so maybe some of that risk is looking at what are cutting edge brands doing from a consumer standpoint.
Sure.
How does that translate into these programs? How can we bring that in with the permission of the brand team? So you're gonna have to win over your brand team.
It takes
no
courage, it takes investment. But what's the risk if you don't do those things?
Right. You have a nice to have program with nice to have results, right? And I don't think that's what anyone on listening to this podcast really aspires to, a nice to have program. So we need to push ourselves, and I think this is one of the main areas. We need to push ourselves some more. So end of my soapbox. But Ryan, thank you so much. It's lovely to have a true expert in another field that can help us tie back to this field and move us forward. We really appreciate you being here. I always forget to tell people in the audience you could have left a question because I get so involved in the discussion. If you have a question for Ryan, and you're listening to this live on LinkedIn, you can leave a question there. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer it. If you're listening to this as a podcast after the fact, find Ryan Farmer or Mad Genius on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you can ask him your question there as well. So he will be available. We'll leave some links in the show notes to the podcast. But thank you, everyone, for your time, and we will see you at the next Talk Advocacy to Me.
Thanks. Bye, Ryan.
Bye.
Bye-bye.